Hello, friends. This is Science Talk. I am your host, Jim Massa, and I want to bring you just a quick video segment. It's one of those video segments where kind of makes one think about things. And basically, what I want to discuss here briefly is that the climate crisis will increase the risk of conflict, armed conflict. Now, if the world warms by 4 degrees C by the end of this century, by 2100, the climate factor becomes more dangerous, about 5 times more dangerous, with an 26% increase in the risk of conflict just for climate change alone. And what happens with climate change? Battling over dwindling resources will be another factor, but also clean, potable water. Even if somehow we're able to keep temperatures to below 2 degrees C as agreed in Paris, the impact of climate and the risk of armed conflict will double, being 13%. So 26% is a fourfold increase, so you have that, you get 13% for doubling. So researchers from the United States report in the journal Nature that they basically spoke with 11 experts on climate and conflict from various disciplines. While there's no consensus, there was one consensus that they all agreed upon. Though I mean no consensus on the mechanism linking a shift in the average temperatures, what happens on a political science aspect or sociological aspect, migration, that kind of stuff. The science, as far as the physics goes, increase in temperature will do this, that, and the next thing. That's established. There's no consensus on what happens to humans as a result of all that's going on. And by that I mean from the sociological aspect and the political science aspect as well. But they, all these experts basically agreed on this one thing. Whatever the process, climate change raises the risk of conflict. Now, this is on the heels of a study that came out in the publication of Global Peace Index, basically warning that 971 million people, that's almost a billion, now live in areas that is termed high or very high climate change exposure, and 400 million of these people already live in countries that are deemed low levels of peacefulness. In other words, shit can happen at any time. And we're always seeing climate change refugees. Well, when you create these climate change refugees moving into areas, that puts more pressure on those societies that they move into. That's another reason for the likely increase in conflicts. And the Global Peace Index issues the same warning that climate change can indirectly increase the likelihood of violent conflict by affecting the resources available to citizens, jobs, and careers, undermining security and forcing migration. The same study also points out the economic costs. In 2018, the impact of violence on the global economy totaled $14.1 trillion in purchasing power. That's more than 11% of the world's economic activity. And basically, if you were to do it per capita, it's almost $1,900 per person. Both studies reinforce earlier research. Social scientists, geographers, and statisticians have repeatedly found links between climate change and conflict between climate change and migration, and have warned there's more coming down the pipe, specifically South Asia and elsewhere in the region. Now, there's some debate about the role of drought of what's going on in Syria, but there's less argument about the proposition that climate change unsettles what may already be nations or communities vulnerable to conflict. So what the base is saying is you have these regions that are in a tenuous situation. They're vulnerable to having some sort of a conflict breakout, and then you throw in what's going on with the climate, and that's kind of like the tipping point, and then all hell literally breaks loose. Now, let's take some lessons from history, or in this case, prehistory. Archaeologists think that climate change may have been behind the collapse of Bronze Age Mediterranean culture and the fall of the ancient Assyrian society. So basically what the theorists are basically saying that climate stresses over the last century have already influenced in some way between 3% and 20% of armed conflict risk. They think the risk could increase dramatically as normally productive agricultural regions face catastrophic crop failure, as extremes of temperature damage reduces crop yields, as well as lowering the nutritional value of the crops. Crowded cities will become more dangerous also as a result, and sustained drought will drive people off their land. Climate change will impoverish the already impoverished and who are already vulnerable. This can lead to increased global levels of injustice and inequality. So when looking at all the possible conflicts that could happen, all the unease in various regions, those working to prevent such outbreaks need to factor in the risk from the changing climate. James Fearon, a political scientist at Stanford University, one of the authors of this research, states that historically levels of armed conflict over time have been heavily influenced by shocks to and changes in international relations among states and in their domestic political system. He continues, it is quite likely that over this century, unprecedented climate change is going to have significant impacts on both, but it is extremely hard to anticipate whether the political changes related to climate change will have big effects on armed conflicts in turn. So I think, this is his opinion, putting non-trivial weight on significant climate effects on conflict is reasonable. Translation, yes, we need to look at climate change effects on potential conflicts. So there you have it. Not only risking environmental degradation, but we're increasing the risk of conflicts. And of course, then once the bombs and missiles start flying, well, there's a shitload of environmental degradation that goes with that, along with high mortalities, etc. As I've stated before, there are too many people on the planet, and everything's going to be hitting the fan soon. And it's not going to be pretty. I'm just sorry if I sound bleak here, but this is just my honest assessment based on what I know of scientific principles and then looking at what folks from other disciplines have contributed. So get prepared. Thank you for your time. Hello folks, this is Jim here with Science Talk, asking you to please subscribe to my channel and to inform others of my channel and of the work that I do. Please share to social media platforms that you use. Also, as a reminder, don't forget to click the bell so that you know when I load up more videos. Finally, I ask that you support the work that I do by becoming a patron at patreon.com. Details in the description box below. Thank you for your support.